It was the sound of a child coughing, dry, weak, and desperate, that woke up the neighbors that cold Tuesday night. But the father of the child, now a millionaire, was nowhere near his family compound. He was out in a fancy hotel room with a woman half his age, drunk and laughing at a football match on TV. 3 years ago, Emeka was nothing like this. He was a soft-spoken man who worked as a civil servant in the Ministry of Works. He earned just enough to feed his family of 5, his wife, Ngozi, and their 3 children. After paying bills, buying foodstuff, and giving the kids transport fare for school, he would use the remaining 3,000 naira to place bets on football matches through a local betting app. People laughed at him. They said he was wasting his time. But he had a belief: one day, one correct score go change my life. And that day came. It was a Sunday. Arsenal beat Liverpool 3-1. Napoli trashed Juventus 4-0. And Real Madrid's 90th minute goal sealed the last game on his slip. Emeka stared at the screen. He had just won 500 million naira. He screamed, fell to his knees, and cried like a baby. The betting company confirmed his win the next morning. Emeka was shaking as he held the check in his hand. For the first time in his life, he felt powerful. His hands were trembling, but his chest rose like a proud king. He called his wife, Ngozi, and told her he was coming home with a surprise. When he arrived, neighbors gathered as they saw the new Prado Jeep parked outside his small rented apartment. Emeka came out wearing dark shades, holding a nylon bag full of bundles of cash. People started calling him Emeka the Lucky. He moved his family out of the one-bedroom flat to a newly built duplex in Gwarinpa. His children changed schools. His wife stopped selling akara by the junction. Everyone thought Emeka's story was proof that patience pays. But something slowly changed in him. He began drinking more. He stopped coming home early. He started surrounding himself with old friends who used to mock him, friends who now praised him and called him chairman. He smiled at the compliments. But his family? They began to feel like strangers. Money didn't just change Emeka's life. It started to change his heart too. It was during a dinner at home that Ngozi noticed the first clear crack in their home. She served Emeka a steaming plate of egusi soup with pounded yam, his favorite. He took one look at it, hissed, and pushed the plate away. "Is this what rich men eat?" he said, grabbing his car keys. "Don't bother cooking again if you'll serve me this nonsense." She stood still, stunned. This was the same man who used to lick his fingers and praise her soup when they had no money. She didn't know what hurt more, the insult or the way he looked at her like she was beneath him. Soon, he started sleeping out. Some nights, he didn't come home at all. The children would ask, "Mummy, where is Daddy?" And she would smile weakly. He bought a second house in Lekki. He began hanging out with slay queens and upcoming actresses. Photos of him began circulating on blogs. One headline read, "Former civil servant now big boy after jackpot win." But while his fame grew, his youngest child, Chisom, grew sicker. A persistent fever. A weak pulse. Ngozi begged him to take the child to a private hospital. Emeka sent 20,000 naira and told her to manage it. The day Chisom died, it rained heavily. Ngozi carried the child on her back to the nearby health center. Her wrapper was soaked. Her hands were cold. The nurses tried their best, but it was too late. Malaria had eaten deep. Emeka didn't show up to the funeral. He was in Dubai, taking selfies with 2 girls beside a rented Lamborghini. When he finally returned, Ngozi didn't speak a word to him. She just handed him Chisom's photo and walked into the room. Emeka stared at the picture, something cold creeping into his chest. But he buried the feeling. He told himself it wasn't his fault. "Children die every day," he muttered. To cope, he dived deeper into pleasure. He bought lands in Abuja and in Enugu. He opened a sports bar, a luxury car dealership, and a betting shop. Money kept multiplying, but so did the emptiness inside him. The love he once had for his family was replaced by a craving for more. More parties, more women, more praise. It was at one of those parties that he met her. A woman with a smile that could stop a riot and eyes that looked like hidden secrets. Her name was Tonya. Tonya was different from the other women Emeka had been with. She didn't beg him for money. She didn't scream when she saw his cars. She didn't even seem impressed by the gold wristwatch he wore. That intrigued him. They met at a private beach party in Lekki. While others danced wildly, she sat alone under a palm tree, sipping a drink and scrolling on her phone. He approached her with confidence, expecting her to melt like others did. Instead, she said, "I know who you are. The man who got lucky." Emeka laughed. "Lucky is an understatement." She smiled. "Luck runs out." Those words should have warned him, but they only drew him in further. Within weeks, Tonya became his obsession. He bought her a house in Banana Island. He cut off most of his friends. He even stopped checking on his businesses. She played her role well, caring, gentle, seductive. Emeka believed he had found the missing piece of his soul. Then he did something no one expected. He married her. In a private wedding with only 10 people present, he placed a diamond ring on her finger and whispered, "Everything I have is now ours." He had no idea what he just invited into his life. It started small. Tonya began making suggestions. "Sell that old bar, it's not classy. Let's stop dealing with your mechanic friend, he's too local. Hire a real accountant, not your cousin." Emeka obeyed every word. He thought she was refining him. He didn't realize he was being isolated. He stopped visiting his family. He blocked Ngozi's number after she texted him a photo of their son's school shoes, worn out with holes. Tonya, meanwhile, upgraded everything, from his wardrobe to his signature drink. She started managing his accounts. "Let me help you, babe. You're too busy to worry about figures." She smiled sweetly, kissed him gently, then quietly drained his strength like cold poison. One day, Emeka tried calling the manager of his car dealership. The number didn't go through. Neither did the one for his estate agent. His sports bar? Shut down. His betting shop? Locked for months. He finally visited one of the properties. The gate man whispered, "Oga, this place has been sold since. Madam said you gave the order." He laughed, thinking it was a joke. But when he checked his bank app, his account balance said 7,200 naira. He blinked twice. Then again. What he saw didn't change. Emeka stormed into the Banana Island mansion. He was breathing hard, sweat soaking his designer shirt. "Tonya, where's my money? Where are my businesses?" She was in the living room, dressed in silk, sipping wine. She looked at him like he was a stranger. "Your money," she said slowly. "We shared everything. Remember?" He grabbed her phone. She didn't resist. His eyes widened. Over 400 million naira had been transferred over 3 months to various accounts. Most of them were in a man's name, Kelvin O'Bright. "Who is Kelvin?" he growled. Tonya stood up. "The man I should have married," she said coldly. "He's smarter than you. Not just lucky." Emeka's knees weakened. He staggered back, his heartbeat thudding like thunder. She walked past him, heels clicking against marble. "You thought you were a king," she whispered. "You were just the jackpot." By nightfall, she and Kelvin were gone. And Emeka, once the talk of the town, the man who turned 3,000 naira to 500 million naira, was alone, broke, and shaking. The house wasn't even in his name. He stepped outside, barefoot. The security men looked at him with pity. That night, the former millionaire slept in a keke napap by the roadside. Morning came with humiliation. He woke up on the narrow seat of the tricycle, mosquitoes feasting on his neck. The sun exposed him, a man once draped in Gucci, now hiding behind torn curtains. He walked back to his former compound in Kubwa. Children ran after him, whispering, "Is that not Oga Emeka?" His old landlord didn't even open the gate. "Go away," the man shouted. "You no pay me last time." He had no choice. He went to the only place that ever gave him comfort, Ngozi's house. She was shocked when she opened the door. His beard was rough. His face was sunken. His hands trembled. "Please," he whispered. I have nowhere else to go." She said nothing, just stared at him. The man who had once called her soup nonsense. The man who abandoned his sick child. The man who didn't show up at their son's burial. But Ngozi wasn't cruel. She stepped aside. He entered slowly, his pride left outside the door. The children looked up from their books, confused. "Who is that?" the eldest asked. Ngozi replied quietly, "That is, your father." And just like that, the millionaire who forgot his roots had come back to where it all began. The first week back was painful. Emeka couldn't sleep well on the mattress that lay directly on the floor. He was used to memory foam beds and air-conditioned rooms. Now, the heat was unforgiving, and the mosquitoes sang without mercy. Every night, he stared at the ceiling, replaying everything. The first bet he placed, Chisam's last cough, Tonya's cold eyes, and the moment he saw his account balance disappear. He began helping around the house. Washing plates, boiling water, fetching groceries. Slowly, his children warmed up to him. His daughter even laughed one night when he mispronounced Indomie. Ngozi watched in silence. She didn't smile, but she didn't chase him away either. He got a job as a storekeeper in a warehouse. 25,000 naira per month. A huge fall from 500 million naira, but he didn't complain. One night, as they sat outside under the moon, Emeka turned to Ngozi. "I'm sorry," he said, voice cracking. "I let money turn me into something I don't even recognize." She finally looked him in the eyes. "I begged you to take Chisum to a better hospital," she said, tears forming. "You sent me 20,000 naira and a football meme." He dropped his head. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. A month passed. One evening, as Emeka returned from work, he found a brown envelope by the doorstep. It had no name on it, just the words, "You've been chosen. Don't ignore this opportunity." Inside was a letter and a contact address for something called the Brotherhood of the Second Chance. At first, he laughed. "Is this Yahoo Boys again?" But something felt different. That night, he sat with the letter again. The message was mysterious, but one line stood out, "You have suffered loss. Now prepare for restoration." He had nothing left to lose. The next day, he followed the address. It led him to an old compound near Yanya. At the gate stood a short, bald man wearing white and holding a walking stick. "Welcome, Emeka," the man said before he could introduce himself. Emeka froze. "How do you know my name?" The man only smiled. "You bet with your life. You lost. Now let us teach you how to win again." He led Emeka inside. The house was filled with people. Old, young, male, female, all gathered around in silence. Was this a cult? Or something else? He was about to find out that losing 500 million naira was just the beginning. Inside the house, it was dead silent. No one laughed. No one spoke. They all sat cross-legged in a circle like students awaiting instructions. At the center stood a tall woman with long gray braids and eyes that glowed unnaturally. "Emeka," she said calmly, "you are not the first to lose everything. And you won't be the last. But only the willing can rise again." He tried to speak, but she raised her hand. "You must first unlearn what ruined you. Pride, greed, lust, and above all, trusting without discernment." He spent the next 40 days under their mentorship. No phones, no TV, no contact with the outside world. They taught him about business, about emotional discipline, about identifying parasites in human form. He was forced to wash toilets, cook for strangers, and even sleep outside when he got arrogant. Each week, someone would tell their story: a once-rich banker scammed by his own sister, a woman who lost her family chasing foreign visa fraud, and a tech guy whose best friend ruined his startup. Emeka listened. He wept. He confessed. And at the end of the 40th day, they handed him a sealed envelope. Inside were 5 names and a second chance. The first name on the list was Kelvin O'Bright. Yes, the same Kelvin who helped Tonya drain Emeka's fortune. Inside the envelope was more than just names. There were addresses, occupations, and suspicious financial details linked to Kelvin. Turns out, Kelvin had a history. 3 previous wives disappeared. 2 lawsuits swept under the rug. All the money he stole was buried in crypto wallets and hidden accounts. The Brotherhood gave Emeka 2 options. Press charges, which could take years and no real justice. Strike from the shadows and reclaim what was his. He chose the second. He didn't want fame. He wanted results. He began work as a janitor at a luxury apartment in Maitama, the same place Kelvin now lived. Day after day, Emeka observed. Watched who came and went. Watched how Kelvin moved. What time he left. Who he drank with. He made notes. He planned. He waited. One morning, Kelvin stepped into his luxury SUV, and the car refused to start. A few minutes later, his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Do you remember Emeka? Because he remembers you. For the first time, Kelvin was afraid, and Emeka felt alive again. The trap was simple, but effective. Kelvin received another message. Transfer 80 million naira to the following account in 24 hours or your sins go public. Proofs are already with Sahara reporters. He panicked. He called Tonya, but her line was switched off. You see, Emeka had already reached her, through her weakness. A certain sugar daddy in Ghana had lured her away. Emeka had planted a young man from the Brotherhood to pose as that sugar daddy. The moment she left Nigeria, she was taken into custody in Accra for identity fraud. She confessed everything under pressure. Kelvin was cornered. He called the number back, hoping to negotiate. Emeka answered with a chuckle. You remember that 500 million naira, Kelvin? Silence. Emeka continued. This is not revenge. It's balance. That day, 80 million naira hit the Brotherhood's clean account. Emeka didn't touch a kobo. The Brotherhood reinvested it into real businesses, this time in Emeka's name, but under their structure. He was building again, but with wisdom. He went home that night to Ngozi and the children. He sat beside her while she cut vegetables and said softly, I'm not rich again, but I'm rebuilding. Differently this time. She didn't reply, but for the first time, she smiled. The second name on the list? Benson Okwara, the shady politician who connived with Emeka to sell off one of his properties cheaply, then flipped it for triple the price behind his back. Emeka had trusted him blindly during his rich days. He's my uncle, he'd said. He'll help me. But Uncle Benson never returned calls after the deal. Emeka followed him to one of his political campaign offices. He wore a faded cap and slippers, posing as a cleaner. Each day, he quietly collected details, the people he met, the illegal campaign fund transfers, the offshore accounts. One night, Emeka planted a flash drive containing secret recordings from Benson's own staff into the hands of an investigative journalist. 3 weeks later, the headlines screamed. Senator Okwara accused of land scam and voter bribery. Benson was arrested. As he was being dragged away by EFCC agents, Emeka stood across the road with a bag of roasted groundnuts, watching silently. He didn't smile. He just whispered, no more foolish trust. Emeka no longer needed to shout. He no longer chased clout. But he was slowly undoing the damage, not just to his wallet, but to his soul. And there were still 3 names left. The third name? Samson the realtor, the man who had convinced Emeka to invest 120 million naira in a smart city estate that never existed. Emeka tracked him to a new real estate firm operating under a different name in Port Harcourt. The man had shaved his head, grown a beard, and started a fake church called Wellspring of Multiplication Ministries. Funny how scammers always hide behind religion when they run out of tricks. Emeka didn't expose him through EFCC. He hit him harder, financially. With help from the Brotherhood's data analysts, Emeka created a fake investor profile, a billionaire from South Africa seeking to expand into Nigerian land business. Samson fell hard for the bait. They invited him to Lagos for a meeting in a fake office fitted to look like a corporate headquarters. He was told to bring proof of ownership for all his properties. He printed everything. Unknowingly, those documents were duplicated and handed to authorities with fraud evidence gathered by the Brotherhood. 3 months later, Emeka legally acquired 3 of his former properties, this time at auction, and at 1/5 the original cost. This time, Emeka signed the documents with his own hand and his real name. Meanwhile, back home, something unexpected happened. Ngozi fell ill. She tried to hide it, said it was just stress, but Emeka saw the signs. Weight loss, constant cough, fatigue. This time, he didn't delay. He took her to a private hospital in Jabi and stayed by her side throughout the tests and treatments. Doctors diagnosed her with early-stage cancer, but it was treatable. The old Emeka would have cried, panicked, maybe even run away. The new Emeka stayed calm. He liquidated a portion of his new business shares and paid the bills up front. No betting, no gambling, just quiet action. He held her hand during chemo, helped with house chores, talked to the kids more. One day, as he sat by her hospital bed reading Psalm 91 softly, Ngozi turned to him and whispered, "You came back." He nodded. This time, for good. She squeezed his hand. "Then let's start again." The road was still long, but the broken pieces were starting to come back together. One more surprise would shake Emeka, and this one wasn't from an enemy. It was from someone he never expected to see again. He almost didn't recognize her. It was a rainy Saturday. Emeka had gone to collect drugs from the hospital pharmacy when he saw her, standing near the maternity ward, holding a baby. She wore a long scarf over her head, and her once fair skin had faded into paleness. Tonya. Yes, the same woman who vanished with Kelvin. The same woman who bled him dry and mocked his pain. But now, she looked like life had drained her too. He froze. She didn't. She walked up to him slowly. "I knew I'd see you again," she said, her voice softer, almost broken. "Kelvin used me and dumped me in Accra. When I tried returning to Nigeria, I was detained. I lost everything." Emeka's jaw tightened. His fists clenched. A part of him wanted to shout, to humiliate her. But the Brotherhood had changed him. She lowered her eyes. "This baby is his, and he left us both." She stretched her hand out, holding an envelope. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to return this." Inside the envelope was a deed, one of the few properties he thought he'd lost forever. He took it, said nothing, and walked away. Weeks passed. Ngozi's strength began to return. The chemo worked. Slowly, her laughter returned to the house, and the children smiled more freely. Emeka focused on rebuilding. With guidance from the Brotherhood, he now ran a logistics company and co-owned a water factory supplying Abuja and Enugu. For the first time, everything he owned was clean, traceable, and legally protected. No fast money. No late-night betting. No reckless friendships. He even opened a foundation for men recovering from gambling addiction. One Thursday afternoon, the last 2 names on the list from the Brotherhood arrived at his door. But Emeka tore the envelope without opening it. "Why?" Ngozi asked. He looked at her and said gently, "I've fought enough shadows. I don't want revenge anymore. I want peace." She nodded. The next day, he visited Chisholm's grave. He placed fresh flowers on the small cemented tomb. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he whispered, "I'm sorry I failed you, but I promise to protect your sisters with everything I have left." As he stood up, the sky opened, and rain began to fall. But Emeka didn't run. He let it wash him, fully, finally, like a man. News broke a month later. Kelvin O'Bright, international scammer, was arrested in Dubai for laundering over $3 million through fake crypto platforms. Emeka read the news without flinching. Justice had come, not by his hand, but by time and truth. He had learned something powerful. Not every battle needs your blade. Sometimes, the world has a way of circling back with its own judgment. One evening, he was invited to speak at a youth seminar on financial discipline. The host introduced him with shock. "This is the man who once won 500 million Nigerian nairas and lost it all." The crowd stared as Emeka took the mic. "I lost everything because I wasn't ready for it," he began. "Money doesn't change people. It reveals who they really are." He spoke about betting, about pride, about betrayal, but most of all, about redemption. When he finished, the hall was quiet. Then applause erupted. As he stepped down, a young man ran up to him. "Sir, I was about to stake my school fees on a sure game today, but your story changed my mind." Emeka smiled. That, right there, felt better than any jackpot ever did. 1 year later, the house was small, but warm. No marble floors, no imported chandelier. But the air was filled with joy, laughter, and music from the children's cartoon show. Ngozi walked into the living room, holding a bowl of soup. "Dinner is ready," she said. Emeka walked in behind her, holding a business plan he was working on with his new mentor. No betting slips in sight. His daughter danced to the cartoon song while his second daughter read his schoolbook out loud. For the first time in years, peace wasn't something Emeka chased. It was something he lived in. He still remembered the past, the mistakes, the greed, the betrayal. But they didn't control him anymore. He no longer felt like a man who lost 500 million Nigerian nairas. He felt like a man who gained a second chance and used it wisely. As he sat down to eat, he looked at Ngozi and whispered, "Thank you for not shutting the door." She smiled. "Thank you for finally coming home." Outside, the night was quiet. Inside, the table was full. And for the first time in a long time, Emeka's heart was full too.